Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got several big guests coming up today. We've got former Congressman Dr. Ron Paul coming on the broadcast. And then we have Kurt Haskell, who witnessed the federal government getting the underwear bomber on the plane. Well, now we learned that the Islamicists that attacked, supposedly over in France, they were in the same safe house and trained by the same people and were all Iraqi. So to be clear, I'm not saying there aren't radical Muslim terrorists. I'm not saying that this probably wasn't a real attack. I'm saying upstream, the West is funding, financing, and protecting these people so that special interests can take our freedoms. And I want to open the phones up today and get your take on all of this. This is obviously the new big kickoff. They've said on the news, this will never end. It's like the war on drugs. You're ready to give up all your liberties. ISIS is going to be attacking America, MI6, CIA. They're all saying it. Why? It's metastasized. It's spread. It's all over. We can't stop it. France deploys 10,000 troops on the streets, checkpoints everywhere, for 3 punks who went to al-Qaeda training camps in Yemen, and now the girlfriend has run through Turkey to Syria, where our government and other governments in the West have given tens of billions of dollars the last 4+ years to these very groups to run around doing to Syria what was done in Paris on a scale of, if they've killed over 300,000 people, that's a number about a year old. It slowed down some. It's close to 350,000 people killed, most of them civilians, by al-Qaeda and affiliated ISIS scumbag formations out of Saudi Arabia. That's who's quarterbacking and funding the whole deal. Well, more than quarterbacking, it's kind of the back office, if you use a football analogy or baseball analogy. What's 350,000 divided by 20? Can you guys do that? And that's how many times bigger the ISIS-Al-Qaeda bloodbath has been for Syria alone. Over 100,000 last numbers we've gotten since Al-Qaeda liberated, with Western backing, Libya. And now they're taking their time killing all the non-radical Muslims, all the Alawites, any Christians they can get their mittens on. Oh,
hey, Alex, we have that number.
We have the number?
Yes, sir. 17,500.
So 17,500 times. We need to do a story on that. The numbers vary, 250,000, 350,000. But if you add it all together, it's over 300,000 on average have died in the 4.5-year, quote, civil war started by the West and backed by the West. 17,000 times more people plus. If you divide 20 into 350,000. Think about that. 17,000 plus times as many people as died in France. You would think it was the end of the world what happened in France. You would think that flying saucers landed and blew up every major city, how big the story is. I'm sad 20 people are dead. That many people died in a couple hours yesterday on U.S. highways. And then media gets to, and the government gets to act like it's for free speech. Just like Obama did with the interview being hacked. Turned out that was an inside job, not North Korea. While they roll out internet censorship big time. Well, guess what Paul Watson discovered? It's up on Infowars.com, and DrudgeReport.com picked it up. ISIS hack of Pentagon Twitter accounts traced back to Maryland. NSA implicated in latest cybersecurity scare. Stay with us, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back. That's Ministry exposing false flag stage terror. Bringing us in. Lies! Lies! Lies, 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 lies. Remember back in the late 80s, they came out with that album with the New World Order. Exposing the New World Order. Al Jorgensen of Ministry. who is a fellow Austinite. He also lives down in El Paso part of the year. We need to get him in studio sometime. I ought to give Al of Ministry Fame a call. One more musician awake to what's going on in the world. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are broadcasting worldwide on this Tuesday, the 13th day of January 2015, worldwide broadcast. And we have been somewhat distracted, even though it's been an important story, with the attacks in Paris, because it is a true-life, bloody soap opera. Our hearts go out to the 20 dead. And through this Rosetta Stone, the skeleton key, this decoder ring of looking at how the media presents the official story and how it's now unraveled, it shows us the rest of the story. So even globalist propaganda can be deciphered as a teaching tool to show folks how the cow ate the cabbage. But I'm not going to spend too much time on that today. I'm sure callers will want to talk about it. We have former Congressman Ron Paul joining us, and then we have another whistleblower guest who witnessed a staged terror attack and was then proven correct in Congress that it indeed was a pretty much staged event. Kurt Haskell, the lawyer, will be joining us from Michigan, from Detroit. Now, we covered this yesterday, that the Paris shooters trained with the underwear bomber Patsy. That's how long they've been training with al-Qaeda. At least 5 years. 5 years. You heard me right. And we're allowed to travel in and out of the country and post terrorist training videos on Facebook. And no one stopped them, but we need new cybersecurity laws passed that they're now introducing to get rid of free speech, legalize NSA spying that's illegal right now. Europe's announcing the same thing. We need more militarized police, 10,000 troops on the streets of France. The U.S. sending advisors on how to properly make it look like occupied France from 1940, 1941. That's the answer. Don't control the borders. Don't arrest people when they clearly are training at al-Qaeda training camps and are on no-fly list. Keep letting them fly in and out, just like they did with Major Hassan, controlled by Anwar al-Awlaki, the Fort Hood shooter, just like he controlled the underwear bomber, just like he controlled these guys, these latest scumbags. And then Awlaki, it's come out in the Associated Press and London Guardian, and Colonel Schaefer's talked about it on air. In fact, just cue that back up, please. And it came out in congressional testimony, and that Anwar al-Awlaki is a double, triple agent of MI6, CIA, and al-Qaeda. And they say, oh, he was a triple agent. He snuck up on us. No, he handles all these people, and then they allow the attacks to take place. Major Hassan was a out-of-his-mind killer and was a real terrorist. But he was handled and manipulated by a globalist controller, Anwar al-Awlaki. Same thing with these three scumbags in France. Same thing with the drugged-up underwear bomber and a bunch of other patsies that Awlaki handles. So we have that, and we know our government and other Western governments have given over $10 billion the last 4.5 years that we know about. It's $2 billion just last year from the U.S. alone. So when I say $10 billion, I guess that's wrong. That's U.S. numbers. I haven't added up all the other countries. France was the other big contributor. Saudi Arabia is the secret contributor and contributes to the coordination. That's come out. To kill 17,000 times. We did the math earlier. What was the exact number? If you divide 20 dead French into 350,000 dead Syrians, most of them civilians, killed by al-Qaeda and ISIS groups. Boko Haram in Africa, al-Qaeda flag, same group. But in Syria, 300+ thousand. If you divide 20 into that, it's 17,000 plus times. 17,500 times more people have been killed in 4.5 years, Western-backed, paid for by U.S. taxpayers, Turkish taxpayers, French taxpayers. advised by our military, 17,500 times more people and change have died. Are there going to be any marches for them? No. Are there going to be candlelight vigils? No. Is there going to be any news coverage? No. Only 2 years ago, when thousands of officers, commissioned and non-commissioned, held up over their faces and their name tags, computer printouts saying, I will not fight, or hand-drawn, I will not fight in Syria for Al-Qaeda. And a lot of them said Infowars.com under it. Only Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com, and DrudgeReport.com even covered that. It was viral on Twitter and Facebook. There's one of the pictures. I didn't join the Navy to fight Al-Qaeda in a Syrian civil war. I will not fight for Al-Qaeda in Syria. And under that, Infowars.com. If you expand it, I think that's the one that has Infowars.com. A bunch of them do. Military revolt against Obama's attack on Syria. I know I started the show with this yesterday. I'm starting with it again because the military gets it. This is the reality of what's going on. Because our military's been over there. They fought these people. They know the players, and they are really freaked out about it. You look up some of the signs. I will not fight in Syria for Al-Qaeda. De oppresso libre, free the oppressed. That's a Green Beret slogan. Infowars. If you scroll back up, I mean, look at what the officers are saying there. Wake up, people. Go back to the one that says wake up. I want to read that to viewers and listeners. Obama, I will not deploy to fight for your Al-Qaeda rebels in Syria. Wake up, people. And the Pentagon intel that was presented to Congress 2 years ago was 75% is Al-Qaeda actual brigades trained in Saudi Arabia and Yemen and other areas. As of late last year, it was 2 years ago, it was that. As of late last year, so I keep forgetting it's 2015 now, it was 95% were Al-Qaeda. They have killed or displaced any rebels that were not complete bloodthirsty, out of their mind scum. So now, as of 2 weeks ago, the Iraqi president came out and said, you continue to do daily airdrops to Al-Qaeda, 10 miles off target, battling the Kurds. You are giving Al-Qaeda weapons on purpose. We're not stupid. And they released videos and photos shot by the Iraqi military, trained by our military, of Al-Qaeda getting the weapons. So Obama is continuing airdrops to Al-Qaeda right now. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up. I cannot believe this myself. This is so over the top. There it is, ISIS video. America's airdrop weapons now in our hands. Oh, that's because our troops will no longer land on the ground and give it to them. They've refused. They will no longer do it. And that really upsets the power structure because they want our military compartmentalized. So that said, I want to hear from listeners about this because we've been predicting a big Pearl Harbor false flag or a group of false flags in the entertainment industry and against the Pentagon and others to sell in Congress the idea of SOPA and international treaties, SOPA and CISPA, and the Cybersecurity Act that legalizes all this currently illegal NSA spying. I don't believe for a minute that ISIS, who are a bunch of spoiled, rotten, 25-year-old thugs on average who want to, they don't want to join the army to prove they're a man of the Marines, so they go join Al-Qaeda. They're allowed to fly out. They're allowed to leave their countries. They're allowed to go back and forth, just like the attackers in France. It's real trendy. All the cool hip-hop girls want to date them because they're real men. That's the way to roll. Do you really believe ISIS hacked the Pentagon, CENTCOM, and their Twitter and everything else? Bull. Bull, bull, bull. ISIS hack of Pentagon Twitter accounts traced back to Maryland. I mean, they don't even hide it. NSA implicated in latest cybersecurity scare. Infowars.com. Paul Joseph Watson article. It's also on the right-hand side of DrudgeReport.com. According to the group, which affiliates itself with Anonymous, you know, that's why I'm not against Anonymous, but anybody can say they're anonymous. Good hackers, bad hackers, the globalist. According to the group, which is, I mean, Anonymous, the real Anonymous is mad at the radical al-Qaeda people and are standing up and attacking them and saying, take down their Twitter and Facebooks. Why are they allowed to have them? That's not free speech calling for violence. The real Anonymous wants them shut off Twitter and Facebook. The real Anonymous is not hacking CENTCOM. We'll be right back. Stay with us. You know what blows me away? How the bizarro left always promotes the most radical groups in Islam. Sexual mutilation, women in burqas, women not allowed to drive, women locked up. And then all these trendy women in France and Australia, you name it, teenage girls will get on airplanes and fly to, you know, Syria to be gang raped and be pregnant in 2 weeks. ISIS, police quiz teenage girls who tried to flee Australia to become terror brides in Syria. Pregnant within 2 weeks. Look at them. You think they had daddy issues, wanted to get back at daddy? And then look at them in their little al-Qaeda outfits. I'm going to vomit. This is what modern feminism has done to us. This is the trendiness. But to speak out against your daughter being put in a slave pit, that's not culturally open. You know, I always love how they say all cultures are equal and all cultures are good, but classical Western culture, it's bad, it's got to be overturned. Well, no, I think the Aztec culture, sacrificing 10,000 people on a lunar eclipse and killing all the neighboring tribes to supply slaves, and the main source of meat for the priest class was the dead bodies. Chocmul got the heart and things like that. But they would hang the bodies up down in the market and then sell the human flesh as the main meat. I think that was a pretty sick culture of the Aztecs that degenerated the Mayans. I mean, the Mayans at one period would like sacrifice a couple people a year. I'm not saying that's good, but it was done to the priest class themselves. Then it degenerated down into the Aztecs, who were ready to collapse the entire culture by the time Cortez showed up with a couple hundred men and took over millions. About 3 million people were down there, and a couple hundred guys conquered them with disease and other things. But the point I'm getting at is radical Islam is taking over Islam. You can't debate that. It's taking over. Bullying, because moderates, it's like moderate Americans, libertarians. The average American in major studies is libertarian. That's pretty much agreed to. You can look it up. Even the Financial Times of London has said libertarianism is sweeping the world. Even if you're fiscally conservative and socially conservative, you know, you're live and let live. Hey, okay, live how you want. No, we're going to tell you how to live. We're going to teach your kids sexual education when they're 6. We're going to give them vaccines even if you don't want. We're going to teach your daughters about this and that. And you're like, well, that's not tolerant. I should be able to live my life. No, 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 no. You don't understand. This is a one-way street. You don't tell us how to live. We tell you how to live. And so because we don't have any defense and we just lay down to whoever bosses us around, we have no culture. The NFL and the NBA and the NHL is not a culture, men. I mean, who are you? What do you stand for? Al-Qaeda stands for something. The globalists that are setting up a worldwide eugenics platform, they have an agenda. They stand for something. And why do you think Homeland Security, here domestically, but also in the EU, why they're so against Le Pen, which is a mild libertarian nationalist French group, very classy? Why do you think it's so demonized? It's like Ron Paul light. Because it's a culture. And any culture can stand up against another culture. And if it's a superior culture that creates incredible wealth and architecture and literature and freedom and indoor plumbing and electricity and spaceships and classical music, how can that be overrun by the worst elements of radical Islam out of Saudi Arabia? I mean, what a dirtbag government that is. It's because we have no culture, folks. It's been removed. We have the NFL. in between the vaccine ads and the Prozac ads and the beer ads and being lectured about how great Obamacare is. Well, that can't stand up against Al-Qaeda. That can't stand up against gangster rap, the worst, vile, mindless scum type garbage is what will come to the top because we have been set up to fail and lay down and die in a ditch. But the gangster culture and all that's just to induct our youth into prison system. And the whole Al-Qaeda threat has been for a clash of civilizations to destabilize the West. In the end, though, the great culture that's overriding us is the scientific dictatorship of eugenics and transhumanism that has already announced the end of humanity, the end of the age of man, and the rise of humans merging with machines. So I'm just here to let you know what's going on and that you might want to rally against it and get informed on it. I'm going to give the number out, take your calls, hit a ton of news straight ahead. I'd like to get your take on the aftermath now of the Paris attacks. We now know it leads back to the same globalist-controlled Anwar al-Awlaki, who always basically handles the terrorists that attack. And these attacks never get foiled, even though there's a long trail of evidence and every reason to arrest these people prior to the attacks. It's being allowed to happen. Do you disagree with that? Do you agree with that statement? I don't know how you could disagree. And then how obvious are all these cyber attacks that they claim North Korea launched? I'm no fan of North Korea, but they can't even manufacture an automobile. Only 2 cities have electricity. They have primitive computers. North Korea is a joke. And then, of course, it turned out North Korea did not hack Sony. It was an inside job. Well, now, ISIS hack of Pentagon Twitter accounts traced back to Maryland. NSA implicated in latest cybersecurity scare. The article's by Paul Joseph Watson on Infowars.com. According to the group, which identifies itself as anonymous, the ISIS hack of the Pentagon Twitter accounts traced back to Maryland, home of the National Security Agency. Twitter and YouTube accounts belong to the U.S. military command that oversees operations in the Middle East were reportedly hacked by ISIS sympathizers earlier today, with messages being sent out for almost an hour before the accounts were temporarily shut down. American soldiers, we are coming. Watch your back, ISIS, the hackers posted on the U.S. Central Command Twitter feed. And when that first went out yesterday, I saw it and read it and misinterpreted it as if CENTCOM was saying we're coming after you. So that's a correction. And that's the type of mistakes I make because there's no teleprompters here. I'm just going off stacks of news. And even though I'm accurate probably 95% of the time, I make mistakes like that, and I try to correct them. In fact, the crew corrected me during the last break. I had read these articles yesterday, and I was going off memory. There's a whole bunch of young women in Europe and other countries, the United States, UK, that are traveling and joining the jihad. And I had read these articles yesterday, and then it said Australia. Sometimes that word gets in my mind from Austria, the country bordering Germany that Hitler came from, and its capital is Vienna. I know all about it. I'll just make the most ridiculous mistakes sometimes, so that's a mistake I made. Not about the young women getting pregnant and going and joining them. Here's the headlines. Pregnant Austrian teens in ISIS. We've made a huge mistake. 2 Austrian teens got way more than they bargained for when they abandoned their homes and families to become poster girls for ISIS terrorists. That's like wanting to become poster girls for piranhas or something. It's just, and now they desperately want to come home. Samra Kizanovic, 17, and her friend, Selmovic, 15, would love to press the undo button on the last 6 months during which they traded their comfortable existence in Europe for a life of evil engineered by terrorists. And it goes on to show them in Syria from what they looked like before to in their jihadi garb, working with people that grab small young girls from the families in Syria and sell them into sex slavery. And have public auctions of them, which, of course, the feminists say zero about. Modern feminists just want to dominate women and tell them what to do and be their cultural bosses. and then have the women boss the men around. Well, all of you CIA Gloria Steinems that tell women not to have kids, but you got a bunch of kids, and you know, everything else, you can go straight to Hades. No one listens to you but idiots. Every metric, every poll shows that the vast majority of women do not identify themselves as feminist. You don't represent femininity. People don't have to go through you, the priest class of women, to find femininity and feminine power. You understand that? You lose, you fail. I don't care how much social engineering you engage in. I don't care about how much brainwashing you do to try to break up the family and screw up society. Folks now know what you've done to the world. They know how premeditatedly evil you are. And in places that are run by feminists and total liberals, this is what the young women revolt against and then go and join something that's the opposite but just as bad or worse. And I just cannot believe how on the major universities, the sexiest thing out there is radical Islam. And this is all being done to destabilize and screw up the country. You know, we raised our boys to not be men. And then women end up going for, quote, the bad boys, the convicts, the gangbangers, and end up totally unhappy and unfulfilled because good men won't act like men. Arrested Development, playing video games all day, the good boys are, while the bad boys are out there robbing liquor stores and getting your daughter on heroin and putting her on the street. Men need to start acting like men and stop being politically correct and start taking control of your families, or the state will. ISIS police quiz teenage girls who tried to flee Austria to become terror brides in Syria. So more are trying to make their way there to have the fun. Here's the toll-free number ahead of Ron Paul joining us, 800-259-9231, 1-800-259-9231. And we will get you up and on the air. Very interesting video. It's bleeped out. Moroccan-born mayor of Rotterdam in the Netherlands tells fellow Muslims who do not appreciate their freedoms of living in the West to pack your bags and get the F out of the country on live television. Let's cue that up. We've got it beeped. I really like that perspective. I mean, here's the deal. We can't go to Saudi Arabia and preach the gospel on the street or even hand out Bibles, or they will put you in prison for life or execute you. And you won't hear any civil rights movement decrying that. It's their culture, and if they want to kill you, it's fine. It's trendy. It's liberal. Free speech, though, is bad. If you say that men should be men and that if a woman wants to do that and have the man wear the pants, that's a good thing, oh, that's evil, or all sex is rape between a man and a woman. That's just a bunch of feminists that want all the women for themselves. And if lesbian feminists like women, that's their prerogative. I'm a libertarian. Just you're not going to control them all and put them in a harem for yourself. I know you want to get them when they're 5 years old in school and train them up to be, you know, only like women, but I'm sorry, you're not going to get all of them. I mean, you just want to run pimp gang. Pimp game, ladies, I understand. The feminists are government pimps, and they're pimping. And they sit up there on TV and tell women how to run their lives, and some women step and fetch it. But so many women followed what the feminists said forever and were totally unhappy and unfulfilled. And now the big craze is women like to crawl around on their all fours with a chain around their neck being told what to do by men. I think that's bad. I don't like that. But that's what you people create. You got all these women begging to be dominated now all over the place, begging to go join jihad and live in a slave pit. Because women would rather go live in a slave pit with dirty jihadis than sit there and have a, I don't know what you call it, Janet Reno lookalike tell her how to live her life. Sorry, it's game over. I love it. Anyway, side issue. I mean, let's just get down to what this is really all about. Let's just get right down to it. the big battle comes down to who loves the women more. Truth is, you don't love the women, do you, Janet Reno? You just want to run their lives because you don't like real femininity. You don't like how beautiful they are. You don't want them to be free. You don't want them to have guns and be free and strong. You want to dominate them and control them and ruin them and make the state their dirty husband, don't you? Well, that's not going to work, scum, because people want to be free and they want to be empowered and they want to be natural. You have failed. And they failed all over the place. Everybody I talk to, I hear it on talk radio, no one is buying that these ISIS hacks are real. But they're still going to try to ram through all this censorship. Here's a Financial Times of London article. Russian and Turkish conspiracy theories swirl after Paris attacks. And major leaders in Russia and Turkey are saying that it's not Muslim extremists that did the shootings, but a French false flag. The culprits are clear. French citizens undertook this massacre, and Muslims were blamed for it. It goes on. Here's the problem. False flags do happen, and I'm the guy that popularized it. Let's just face it. It's well known. I got people to look into false flags, inside jobs, and all the different variants of that. That said, this worldwide jihad being funded by the West and Saudi Arabia is real. These guys were set up and protected, but nevertheless, they were real terrorists. From as best we can tell. So there's that story. I've got a bunch of economy news, science news, political news, Rand Paul news. We got Seahawks players shilling for Obamacare and new ads. The NFL is just such a joke. Lieberman turns outrage over Charlie Hebdo into worldwide war against Islam. Well, yeah, that's the plan, but I would ask these real conspiracy theorists saying that these radical Muslims didn't kill 20 people. Did they kill the 300,000+ people in Syria who weren't radical Muslims or Christians? Yes, they did. Did the Muslim Brotherhood crucify Christians and blow up hundreds of churches? Yes, they did. Did they attack non-radical Muslims and throw them off buildings on TV? Yes, they did. Stop acting like you can dictate reality like Obama does, saying you didn't build your business, or 2 + 2 = 5, or raising the debt limit doesn't raise the debt limit, or you can keep your doctor even though you can't, and I never said that. You don't control reality. And let's just face it, there is a major growing vein of Islam made up of ne'er-do-well thugs who want to run around murdering and killing, and who are giving Western backing and are allowed to fly wherever they want and think they're all really sexy movie stars, a bunch of crazy narcissists running around killing people everywhere. And so just stop acting like it's not going on. Just stop it. Brian, AJ, Michael, Chris, Shane, we're going to get to all of you briefly. There's a great way to wake up friends and family. Tell them about the local AM and FM stations you're listening to right now. Tell people at red lights. Put up a sign on your business. Put up a billboard. Help us, please. We appreciate folks that are paying to put up billboards all over the country. I've said I want to launch an initiative with some of the graphics of billboard designs with large PDFs that folks can download. I want the graphics department to do that. I said it a few weeks ago. I'm in it. I want to come up with some big, simple billboards promoting Infowars.com that you can customize to promote the local station, and just put one up. You can put up a big billboard for a couple $1,000s now and reach hundreds of thousands in a major city. I've had friends and family and neighbors come to me and say, yeah, I was in New York, or I was in Florida, or I was in Georgia, and I saw big billboards for your show. One guy out of Louisiana did that, and we salute him. Other people are now doing it. It's causing a chain reaction. Tell your friends and family about the show. Thank the local stations. Become sponsors, or support the sponsors and let them know why you're supporting them. That's important. Send out the free links to our iPhone and Droid apps at Infowars.com/listen. Send out the free link to the free video feed at Infowars.com/show. Spend $2 and, 50 cents a month to get a yearly membership. 20 people can use it. That's, 20 cents a day or something? I mean, or 20 cents a month per person. Maybe we can put up prisonplanet.tv. There it is. 7 months free when you sign up for a year. $2.50 a month. That's 12 cents per person a month. 20 people can use each membership. Takes about a minute to sign up. prisonplanet.tv. Become a member today. See the nightly news. Download all the films, ebooks, so much more. prisonplanet.tv. And I want to thank everybody that is a prisonplanet.tv member and who has shared their passcode and helped other people get turned on to the truth. You can download the shows in HD, edit them however you want, air them on Access Television in your area, put them on other video platforms. They are copyright free if it's for nonprofit educational purposes. prisonplanet.tv. And your funding of it helps pay for the bandwidth, the cameras, the reporters, and more. Separately, InfoWarsStore.com with the Made in America Pro Gun Apparel, the best water filters. With a promo code WATER, you get 10% off. We're still doing that free shipping. We've got 48% off the Oxy powder with the Secret 12, methylcobalamin, Super B12, so-absorbable, and the Super Mellow Super Film of Vitality. Those three together, 48% off. That ends this week. In fact, I said it'll end Thursday. It'll end tomorrow. Tomorrow is the last day of that special. Take advantage of it at InfoWarsLife.com or InfoWarsStore.com, or call toll-free 888-253-3139. We've got our steam engine heated up. We're going 100 miles an hour down the track. But once you get that coal box, once you get that furnace heated up, folks, you got to keep it heated up. Oh, so hot, no time to take a rest. There is no room for second best. To quote, you got another thing coming. We need to go to the next level, ramming speed against the globalist. I want to go in 110%. We've reached about 100% right now. Now it's time to go into overdrive, so financially support us, and you've got my commitment to not hold anything back and to go forward. Let's go to your phone calls. Brian, Shane, AJ, Michael, Chris, and others. Brian, thanks for calling. You're on the air.
How you doing, Alex?
Good, brother.
I wanted to talk about, you said yesterday that we had lost God in this country, and that's why it's going downhill. But I would say we've lost philosophy. We've lost the ability to think and use logic.
Yeah, common sense.
And to understand what, Obama is doing, you have to understand his philosophical background. He was groomed and trained at Harvard under the teachings of William James and pragmatism. And if you understand pragmatism, it's an excuse for those empowered to do anything.
And if you understand pragmatism, you understand the Rand Corporation 50 years ago saying they would sell us on pragmatism and use financial incentives to enslave us.
Yes, it goes back to Plato, to Kant, and it's all a philosophical excuse to ignore law, to just pretty much anyone in power to do anything they want to. So when you have a constitutional lawyer sitting there violating the law every day, you know why, because he's adhering to his pragmatism.
But they're not pragmatic when they get their rights run over, though.
Oh, of course not. It's only who's in power. It's who rules. It's when you're in power, you can control whoever. God forbid you become the low man on the totem pole.
You want to add more, or are you done, Brian?
I'm good, Alex. Thank you.
Great caller. God, I love that kind of info. Absolutely right. Well, that's right. We have no culture. We have no common sense. We're just rudderless on average. And those of us that are concerned are called terrorists. Our country's turning into tyranny. We're going into too much debt. That person's probably a terrorist, the Southern Poverty Law Center says. We'll be right back. Stay with us. I want to go to Chris and Shane and AJ and Michael and Shirley and others. Ron Paul is coming up. Chris in Texas, you're on the air. Thank you for joining us.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, I have a few points I'd like to make about the ISIS hat.
Yeah, go ahead.
The supposed ISIS hat. Well, I think it's pretty contrived. I mean, I think it's 75% that the NSA is behind it. I haven't even read the article, but I think these people forget that humans have senses, and we can sense when things are, off-putting.
Well, sure. I mean, it just turned out that the whole North Korea hack thing was just a PR stunt, basically, an inside job. And then who really believes all these government systems got hacked and taken over by ISIS? I mean, and then it's anonymous, though, so no one knows. It's just a perfect way to frame people. Look, the internet is a tool to fight tyranny, but the tyrants designed it. They believe that they get the upper hand being able to spy on everybody. They now want to be able to legitimize the spying and legitimize the takeover and all the stuff they were hiding. And so you're going to see more of these cyber attacks. And all these movies are coming out where nuclear reactors are getting blown up and stuff by hacks. And one guy can destroy the world. So we need a big government program to stop it. I mean, they're getting us ready for the new electronic Pearl Harbor. Appreciate the call. AJ in Ohio, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex. I just want to make 2 quick comments about 2 subjects. The first one was what you talked about, culture. I'm here in Ohio, and as you know, Ohio State won a national championship last night. Down in Columbus, the Columbus police dealt with rioting and 90 different fires last night. Okay, why can't we get together and riot, or not riot, but protest and get together and fight back against tyranny? We have to worry about a stupid football game.
Well, and I mean, notice that nobody's criticizing the police for trying to stop people that burned down a bunch of buildings. Well, it's the same thing when people use a cop that shoots somebody questionably to burn stuff down. That's just criminals using that as cover to go out and loot that then discredits legitimate demonstration. But yeah, why don't people go out and demonstrate about the Bill of Rights or the border being wide open or Obama becoming a dictator or our government arming al-Qaeda? Only our military protested. Why do people go out and riot when their team wins or loses? It shows screwed up priorities, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. The second thing I wanted to talk about was the ISIS hacks. One of my best friends was in Iraq. He did 3 tours in Iraq, and he said that that whole Middle Eastern area, not only is it incredibly hard to get any kind of internet access, they had to use satellites and things like that.
Oh, yeah, it's Cavemanville. Stay there. I want to come back and talk to you. Next hour coming up, Ron Paul. But, yeah. I mean, North Korea can't tie their shoelaces, and they ran the hacks. It's all BS. Former Congressman and the leader of the Libertarian Worldwide Movement, Ron Paul, is going to be joining us. Dr. Paul. AJ in Ohio was talking about this hack, ISIS hack of Pentagon Twitter accounts traced back to Maryland. NSA implicated in latest cybersecurity scare. They've got the motive. They've got the know-how. It was all a big hoax that North Korea hacked Sony. And you were talking to one of your friends that spent 3 tours over in the Middle East, and he was saying that basically it's dirt floor, Stone Age, no internet, correct?
Yeah, I mean, basically, you have to have, advanced satellite equipment to even be able to get internet access out there, for one. And for two, I mean, just the education that it takes to be able to learn how to hack and things like that. Yes, there's been incidences where there's 17-year-old kids, but these are kids that are prodigies. You have the average, caveman, thug mentality that goes and joins ISIS. You can't just go down to your local bookstore and buy Hacking for Dummies and then hack, an intricate system like Facebook or Twitter.
Well, sure. I mean, you've got people out there. Some of the hackers are just really smart and able to guess passwords. But when it comes to the code hacking, this is idiot savant type stuff. And it's not coming out of North Korea. It's not coming out of the deserts of Iraq or Syria or the mountains of Syria. We now know it's come out in the news that it bounces back to Maryland. I mean, they don't even try to hide where this is coming from.
I mean, these people are smoking their own dope. They have to be to think that we would actually believe this. All it is a push for cybersecurity and CISPA. Of
course it is.
I mean, that's what it comes down to.
You see, you're informed, though. Remember, the average person out there is really scared that Al-Qaeda is hiding under the bed at night. I mean, it's like a child believing that there's monsters in the closet.
Exactly, and that's the kind of the sad part, because it really doesn't take much brain power to think outside of the box and go, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this picture. But the average American just doesn't see it, and I don't understand. Or
they go to the extreme and say it's all fake, there was no shooters in France, just default, and believe nothing that's being said, when all the evidence shows these are terrorists protected, funded, and aided by the West who are useful idiots. We have that proven. False flag by proxy. In fact, that's the term I'm coining. False flag by proxy is what this is. It's a variant of false flag. It's a let it happen, open the door, finance it scenario. We have them. They did this. They're going to let a bunch of these people attack us. And, folks, it's going to be real when they shoot down jet airliners and stuff. And I am here saying, do not take our freedoms. You let this happen to do this. I've got a bunch of top economists and others have come out, and they're all saying the same thing, that this is going to be exploited to take freedoms. Economist, world leaders will exploit Charlie Hebdo to eliminate encryption. They will use this to strip us of all rights, close quote. We ought to get William Benny back on to pop in about this as well, former head of the NSA. I mean, look at this. It just goes on and on. Anything else, caller?
Yeah, actually, the funny thing is you keep hearing, it's plastered all over the news about these 12 people that died in this Charlie Hebdo attack, but then you have Boko Haram going into Africa and killing 2,000 people, and you don't even see anything about that on the nightly news. So there's a narrative control here.
The West is funding out of Libya. They turned Libya 4 years ago over to al-Qaeda. They're using that now as a pipeline because Libya had built roads and infrastructure into sub-Saharan Africa to fund Boko Haram and others to run around killing tens of thousands and putting women into slavery. And you're not going to hear jack squat out of feminists. Feminists want your 5-year-old boy to be taught how to dress like a girl and teach you that you're not their parents and enslave you and dominate you and break your will. They could care less if thousands of women are being gang raped and murdered right now by groups funded by Western intelligence. They just want to dominate you because you're a high earner and make you learn to step and fetch it when they snap their fingers out of fake guilt. We'll be right back with former Congressman Ron Paul. He'll be with us just for 20 minutes. Then I'll go to Shane and others that are holding. Stay with us. RonPaulInstitute.org is really making waves with the syndicated columns that I see in newspapers all over the country. They're doing syndicated radio vignettes that are on many of these same stations. He's doing satellite television, getting picked up around the world. He's doing radio interviews almost every day. He is, I think, almost more effective now than when he was in Congress from 1996 until just a year or so ago. His son is one of the major front runners for president. We're going to talk about that and more. Joining us is former congressman and the leader of the Libertarian Liberty Movement worldwide, Dr. Ron Paul. And DrudgeReport.com picked it up. We picked it up. It got a lot of attention. Ron Paul's predictions, really, for 2015 and beyond, what he sees coming in the new year. Now, he wrote that a few weeks ago. Now we're into the new year. Now a lot of economists are saying they believe that the real economic implosion is getting closer. So he's going to spend 20 minutes with us, giving us his breakdown of what he sees coming. And remember, as he said many times, if we put out the ideas of liberty as the solution to the crisis, we could use the crisis at the end of this cycle to try to promote freedom and fix things. The socialists and the insiders are going to try to use it to bring in more tyranny. So we're reaching that critical point. Dr. Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Alex. Good to be with you again.
You've got the floor. Tell us what you see coming.
Well, even though I wrote something, I think it was about 18 pages long, but it was longer. When I was doing it, I was thinking about my special orders that I used to do on the House floor when you could get a special hour. So it goes over, the analysis of what's going on and why we have trouble and what I think we should do. But actually, the motivation for me to start to write it was just to write something much shorter and talk about the crisis in the inner city, the militarization of our police, the abuse of our civil liberties. At the same time, the demands of the inner cities, because I sympathize with those who are on the receiving end of the militarization of the police. At the same time, those individuals in the inner city are, they have been used to an entitlement mentality, and it just serves their interest to demand more and more, and then we end up in a conflict. Well, each side has different demands. I think each side are wrong to a degree, but I certainly think that the big issue of the inner cities, and I mentioned in my paper that this has been going on for a long time. I think it was even in the 60s, the riots we had in the 60s had a lot to do with the inner cities and the poverty in the inner cities. Everybody agrees there's poverty there, but some people think, Well, we need more government transfer programs, which I don't agree with, but we need to understand first that we protect civil liberties for everybody equally. At the same time, we have to understand poverty. Then you have to get into economic policy. You have to get into the Federal Reserve, the destruction of the currency, the destruction of the middle class, and why the welfare state ends up getting the very wealthy people in charge of the distribution of wealth. So I've always maintained that welfareism, the principle is so bad, but it's accepted by the far left and the people who want something for free, but they don't get anything because the people who are really in charge, the bankers in the military-industrial complex, they get in charge and they use that principle to their benefit. And I think that's the mess that we're in today, because the cities are getting poorer, the middle class is being eliminated, and there's these constant demands, and I think it's because we've lost our way in the understanding of what personal liberty is all about, and property rights, and sound money, and all the things I've talked about for so long. So I saw the big debate between the militarization of the police and the people who are on the receiving end and the poverty in the inner city as a consequence of a lot of ignorance as far as what is good economic policy and what true liberty is all about. I mean, true liberty doesn't mean that you get what you want and you demand it and that you're entitled to it. That has nothing to do with liberty. That represents a violation of liberty. So that is the general theme of what I was writing about, but even though most of it was warning people and telling people what a mess I think we're in, I really conclude with a bit of optimism, as I always do, that, the Internet is providing us a vehicle for getting our message out, and I think that the message is alive and well. I think the young people are listening. I think what you do on radio and all your efforts, I think, is very beneficial, and a lot of people realize the mess we're in, that the economy is in shambles and the foreign policy is ridiculous. So they're looking for answers, and I believe the freedom movement provides those answers.
Well, and certainly we've predicted what's coming. You've written books on the subject. We know how this works. We're not rocket scientists. This has happened hundreds and hundreds of times in history, or even more, hundreds of times in different countries just in the last few hundred years. Going back to your essay that's at ronpaulinstitute.org, we posted it at Infowars.com as well. Inner city turmoil and other crises, my predictions for 2015. I want to get into some of those other crises, but I've always been a nonpartisan constitutionalist, but I have supported libertarians who run as Republicans or Democrats, and have supported you and your son and others against statists. But the Democrats, I think, really have sunk to a new low with their open fanning of racial division, of anti-police garbage that isn't meant to reform police, but meant to create a balkanization and really to Democratic-connected groups out singing Deck the Halls with Dead Cops. I mean, we have these videos, really vicious provocations that if libertarians did anything like this, we'd be arrested. And I know you're familiar with this. What do you think the attempt is there? We know unemployment's doubled for blacks under Obama. We know collectivism has hurt them more than anybody. Is this a desperate attempt to just distract and make it racial or scapegoat the police? Because I'm a critic of the police state, as are you, but not of just scapegoating the individual police.
No, and the far left likes dishevel, and they like, the discord, because then they figure that they can promote their programs. Just like I said, the inner city is a mess, so they're arguing that the $16 trillion we've spent in the past 50 years on trying to get rid of poverty, starting with LBJ, they figure $32 trillion would do the job. But no, I think they're provocateurs, and I think they're small, but they do get the crowds riled up, and they sort of, I think the Al Sharptons of the world are, I think one suggestion I had made is, there's going to be a mess. There is a mess. People ought to understand the Second Amendment, and they ought to make sure that they, pay attention to the false promises of the Al Sharptons of the world. And that is why, the people, if you and I talk about this, we can get on the receiving end. Blaming blacks and all that kind of stuff. But what they ought to do is look to black leaders that we have in economic policy, and they understand this, and they understand racism, because because they have put up with it in their own life. And that's Walter Williams and Tom Sowell. These guys are just great. They're free market people. They believe in liberty, and they understand why there's poverty in the inner city. And I think they're fantastic. So if your listeners have not read Walter Williams and Tom Sowell, I'm sure they have because I know your audience. But there may be some. I think it's really worthwhile looking at what they say rather than believing that Al Sharpton talks for people. And he just aggravates things, and of course, that's generally what happens. They go in there and just stir up more trouble.
Sure. Let's elaborate briefly on that and then get into some of the other warnings and crises you see getting worse in the new year. And then I want to talk about the economy with you and then the election coming up and more. Again, former Congressman Ron Paul of ronpaulinstitute.org is our guest. Amazing analysis, amazing essays and articles there every day, videos every day at ronpaulchannel.com. Specifically, you were alluding to the Second Amendment as a good thing to maintain order if society breaks down. Undoubtedly, I think the Democrats would like to start a limited civil war in this country. Can you elaborate on your statement about the Second Amendment's role in any type of societal breakdown?
Yeah, I was thinking about in the midst of the problem up in Ferguson, what would I do if I lived there and I had a store? I mean, it just makes no sense for the people who feel like they've been mistreated and they want to strike out against white people and the establishment. They go and destroy buildings that are owned by black people, their neighbors, the people who make a living there. They'll go and bust up their windows. So it made no sense. But it seems like there wasn't this understanding that they have a right and they should be defending their property. So, if you really had an understanding of the Second Amendment, whether you're in Ferguson or wherever, if people started breaking in and you see people jumping in and out of the broken windows and hauling off their loot, it seems to me like maybe some of that could have been averted by just somebody having a right to defend themselves, and that means the use of the Second Amendment. But evidently, that was not done. I guess maybe the rules are too strict in places like this and in the cities. So
Sure.
I think there would be less of it if they knew that they were likely to be shot at if they broke into somebody's
Well, no
building.
kidding. You try to burn down my house or business, you're going to get shot. And that's not because I'm looking for trouble. That's the normal behavior. And in areas where people act like that, you don't have looting and robbing like this because folks would end up pushing daisies and not be on the green side. Ron Paul, moving quick in the 6-7 minutes we've got left with you here today. I want to get into more of your predictions, but shifting gears back to Obama himself. Even Turley, the liberal professor of law, says Obama has done about triple the constitutional violations of Bush that you and I and others were big critics of as well. The Republican leadership is standing down when Obama wants to open the border, shut down more power plants, put our military under NATO control. I mean, for all intents and purposes, is Obama not setting the precedent for an imperial presidency, and what should be done about it?
Well, he's continuing it, but that's been going on for so long. I mean, we could go back and study Woodrow Wilson.
Sure.
He was no saint, and even though some of that stuff, our government's backed off after Wilson was out of office and after he died, but the process has continued. We haven't really had a constitutional president in a long, long time. So whether it was Bush and Obama's just building on this. Executive orders been around for a long time. We've been going to war with executive orders and without declarations. We have a monetary system that can bail out everybody, not only in the United States and our corporations, but worldwide. Trillions and trillions of dollars, and that's not done with approval. I think the Congress is totally derelict in their responsibility because they allow it to happen. And policies come, and the Fed does what they please. There's no limits on which friends they can bail out. So it is a process, and yes, he's an imperial president, but he's just following in the footsteps of others. And he had especially really been bad on the curtailment of freedom of speech. You talk about all this talk about what was going on in France. I wish they would deal with, what is going on in this country, because Obama's been known to put people in prison if they don't reveal their sources, and so it's freedom of speech is being attacked here as well.
Well, that's right. On the heels of this so-called ISIS hack that's now been traced back to Maryland and U.S. sources, just like the North Korea hack was fake, now Obama, AFP reports, has renewed push for cybersecurity and restricting internet freedom. Ron Paul, do you buy into ISIS being able to hack U.S. military sites and take them over, or do you think this might be a false flag?
Well, I'm always skeptical. What was it that they were blaming the North Koreans on not long ago? I said, they can't even turn on their lights. They don't have any lights there. It's a dark country, and they were accusing them of this expertise in something, on the internet. And I was very doubtful. So, yes, whether it's a deliberately planned false flag or whether it is accidental or a blowback or an unintended consequence, it's always used to expand the state. And then when there is a problem, there's an assassination or a bombing, and we have a government investigation. Let's have an investigation. Well, the investigation isn't to seek out truth, and most of the time we never get to truth, but we do get the defense of the government. When this torture issue came up, and they had this, right now they're not releasing the report, in the Congress, and they should. But they talked about all the torturers, and they're finding out that people were breaking the law right and left. But none of them get punished. None of them go to prison. Nobody got penalized for messing up on the information that was available before 9/11. But for the torturers, the only person that went to prison is the CIA agent that came clean and warned us and told us the truth about it. So we put him in prison. That's what is disgusting, and that is what people have to know. And we're making progress here. I think it's like 80% of the people are very untrusting toward the government. And you think, oh, well, that's terrible. You don't want people untrusting. Yeah, but if the government is not taking care of us and protecting our liberties, if the people are waking up and all of a sudden saying, hey, we can't really rely on the government to tell us the truth, that means they have to seek the truth someplace else, and hopefully we all can provide that for them.
Well, absolutely. In the few minutes we've got left, some of the other predictions that are in your essay that's up at ronpaulinstitute.org and Infowars.com, other predictions or crises you see in 2015. And then briefly, I want to talk about, I believe Rand Paul is the best person for president. It's obvious he's going to run. The news just said a few weeks ago, of course he's going to run. You said it 6-8 months ago. Sure. Rand Paul's getting ready. Ted Cruz. You see Jeb Bush, absolutely terrible. Might as well just have Hillary. You've got Hillary, but is this a dynasty where we're going to have King George IX or King Clinton the 12th? We're not North Korea or England. There's got to, in fact, let's cover that first. Election coming up 2016, it's pretty much already starting. Where do you, obviously you support your son, but he is the best candidate there. I like Ted Cruz as well, and then it just gets worse from there.
Yeah. No. Obviously, Rand is doing quite well, and they have to sort of, they were giving him some attention, and it wasn't all bad. It was decent, and a lot of people know him now, and they like what he's been saying. But all of a sudden, what has happened the last couple of weeks? First, it was they didn't want Rand and others to get much attention, so they had to divert the attention. Then they say, oh, Bush is going to run. Jeb Bush is a great candidate. And Bush. He's getting ready, and he's going to have the money, and he's our guy. But then there's dissension among the ranks, and evidently Romney wasn't too pleased to just step back. So he's maybe I'm going to run. So the media plays this up. Now, the only two candidates that seem to exist will be Bush and Romney.
That's right.
So that's their way of exclusion. It's sometimes even when they say, well, there's now, 10 people, 15 people going to run, they'll include Rand, but it's not not where it was by all the polling, a month ago. These guys didn't even show up, but all of a sudden, which means that he's on the receiving end that I guess I could say I had received as well. They know how to handle it in the public if they think you're doing too well,
sure.
and they don't want you to succeed.
Well, that's why I thought it was smart that Rand started basically doing presidential-type election things first, so that he would get the attention up front, and is still a front runner in most polls. That's why they're scared and are trying to only put Jeb Bush and Romney out there and make that fight all about it. We don't need Mitt Romney after 2 runs. We don't need Jeb Bush. My goodness. We don't need Chris Christie. These guys are just Democrats or Beltway Republican rhinos. We need Rand Paul. I mean, he is just the best candidate across the board. I mean, what do you say to the libertarian and constitutionalist troops out there? What can they do to really make sure that Rand stays at the top of the ticket?
Well, I'm not too keen on giving people precise advice. A lot of people have asked me, and I would sort of try to dismiss it a bit and say, well, do whatever you want. If you want to be involved, get involved. If you like a candidate, support him, campaign. And I thought that was what was so neat about our campaign,
sure.
Is that a lot of people did spontaneously do a lot of things that organize and raise money. So I think that people need to do something to be helpful. And sometimes it's running for office, and at the same time you're running for office, you can speak out about all the issues and all the other candidates. Sure. So it's something that the individuals has to decide. Even if an individual is much more into education and all, teaching people why they should understand the issues that we're pushing, on the sound money and civil liberties, that to me is very important. You have to change people's
Absolutely.
attitudes, and that would help a person like Rand as well.
Ron, you've got to go. You're already over.
Right.
I want to get any other just quick predictions, but please say to Rand, just my layman advice, do what Ted Cruz is doing, attacking Jeb Bush and attacking Romney as squishy middle, because that's what we need to keep him at the top. From my view, he needs to come out in a classy way, obviously, and point out how bad Jeb Bush is, point out how bad Chris Christie is, point out how bad Romney is compared, or they are going to really try to push him to the back. Anything else you think is important for 2015 to warn people about?
No, other than the fact that I think our economic crisis is going to continue. It's going to get worse during this year. It's not going to get better. The government is going to try to play it up that things are getting better. I think our foreign policy is going to continue. I think it's very, very dangerous. And this country has to face up to the fact that it's bankrupt. If it doesn't, things are going to get much worse before it gets better. RonPaulInstitute.org. Thank you so much. Okay. Godspeed. Very good. Thanks.
All right, there he goes, ladies and gentlemen. Ron Paul joining us for the last 25 minutes or so. Exclusive, intense, in-depth, real question interview. Rand Paul is the best. I trust him. I've known him for, gosh, I can't believe it's 18, 19 years. 19 years. And he's the guy for president. Ted Cruz will make a great VP, but I'm telling you, Ted Cruz is getting more aggressive. That's why in polls, he's now #1. In real polls, Ted Cruz is now taking the lead because he's being aggressive. It's what people want. Well, Obama now wants to take over the internet after Al-Qaeda attacked the Pentagon websites and Twitter and Facebook. Oh. Excuse me, ISIS, the new name, I forgot, or IS or ISIL or whatever they've confused the public with. Well, now Obama has renewed push for cybersecurity law. And the more NSA, the more spying, the more trillions we spend, the bigger bases Al-Qaeda gets, and our government funds them. Boy, that makes sense. It actually does. President Barack Obama made a renewed push today for cybersecurity legislation, asking the new Congress to revive an initiative stalled over the past few years. The new proposal would allow increased sharing of information on cyber threats from the private sector with protection from liability. That means spying illegally. The measure also would criminalize the sale of stolen financial data. And it's already illegal, folks. It's called wire fraud. And would require companies to notify consumers about data breaches. Obama speaking at the White House meeting congressional leaders and recent events have highlighted the need for tougher legislation. Quote, with the Sony attack that took place, which is now admitted to be an inside job, I'm quoting Obama. This is insane. With the Sony attack that took place, with the Twitter account that was hacked by Islamist jihadist sympathizers yesterday, it just goes to show how much work we need to do, both public and private sector, to strengthen our cybersecurity. So there you go. That's what's going on, ladies and gentlemen. And it's just so predictable that right as all this legislation is being reintroduced, all hell breaks loose. I want to go to Shane, and I want to go to Shirley and Terry and Michael and Joseph and others. The toll-free number to join us is 800-259-9231. Kurt Haskell will join us for about 20 minutes to give us his view on the terror attacks. He, day one, thought it was a false flag of some type. Now it turns out they were trained with the underwear bomber. I mean, this is just insane. Is that he was run by a globalist handler. So we're going to be talking about that, getting into the economy and a lot more. But you heard Ron Paul earlier breaking it down. You might want to comment on what the former congressman had to say as well. Before we go to Shane and others, you can get 20 memberships for basically $2 and change a month. $2.50 a month will get you a membership at prisonplanet.tv to see all of my films, the nightly news, special live reports, other events, ebooks. And it's our platform that's harder for the system to censor. Sometimes we put out a viral video on YouTube or something and they just shut it down. Well, they can't do that as easily on prisonplanet.tv. The nightly news, special reports, movies, rants, ebooks, the Alex Jones Show, commercial-free, the video podcast, prisonplanet.tv. Prisonplanet.tv takes a minute to sign up. It's like buying movie tickets. And then you create a username and passcode that you can share. You have the same username and passcode you use for your other stuff. And then give it to friends and family, and they can go in and log in with the username. I guess that's what they really need is the username. To log in and walk. In fact, that's all you need. To log in, and they can use your membership. That is 12 cents a person per month. The special ends at the end of this month, and it goes back to $54.95, not $29.95. That comes up to $2.50 a month. Or get a trial $5.95 monthly and share that with friends and family. Big way to reach out to folks. Let's say you listen in Austin or Kansas City or Oklahoma City or Chicago, going right in the middle of the country, or Southern California or upstate New York or Rochester or all the places we're on the radio, over 180 affiliates. But your friends and family live in an area without an affiliate. Send them the free podcast link at Infowars.com. The free video link every day of the radio show. Infowars.com/show. Post it to Facebook, Twitter, just as part of your sign-on, part of your profile. Help reach out to others. That's how we're doing this. Get a prisonplanet.tv membership and give it to friends and family. And then you're also helping fund and pay for our bandwidth and infrastructure. Try out some of the great Nason Iodine X2 that nobody else has got, proprietary, that goes in and strips out the toxic halogens that the system dumps in the water and the bread and the rest of the food chain. It's not just enough to strip it out, it blocks it, folks, with the good halogen, true iodine. This is the true iodine that turns purple or blue on paper, not red or black. That's bound iodine. Doesn't have the same effect. This is true, deep earth, pure iodine, not out of the ocean. And look, without iodine, you'll die. So any iodine is better than no iodine, but this is really special. Infowarslife.com or 888-253-3139 to get your X2, Survival Shield, your methylcobalamin Secret 12, proprietary B12 that's so much absorbable. The 48% off, you can get the Super Male or Super Female Vitality, your choice, Oxy Powder, and the Secret 12 for 48% off. That special will end Thursday. We're going to let it run through Wednesday into Thursday, and it's going to end as I said. And your purchase is, again, what funds this operation. PrisonPlanet.tv, InfoWarsLife.com, or 888-253-3139. You'll find the Lung Cleanse, the Silver Bullet Colloidal Silver, the DNA Force, all the best products we could develop with Dr. Group and others at InfoWarsLife.com. The AccuPower, great for the eyes, the most powerful eye formula out there that we can formulate. Fluoride Shield, the chelator, it's all there, a lot of specials running. While supplies last, we're doing a test of Ancient Defense, a new product. The high-quality organic coffee, InfoWarsLife.com. And separately, InfoWarsHealth.com is the powerful longevity line, Beyond Tangy Tangerine, OsteoFX, Pollen Burst, and over 400 products that are just over-the-top good. Organic Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0. Your purchase at InfoWarsHealth.com, you can get discounts by signing up to be a distributor or sign up for free shipping at InfoWarsHealth.com to get those longevity products discounted. A lot of informational videos as well. InfoWarsHealth.com or InfoWarsTeam.com for the great longevity products. There's a new customer line. If you've got any questions or want to sign up to get discounts to be a distributor, 888-789-9277, 888-789-9277, or customer service 888-636-9277. InfoWarsHealth.com for the complete longevity line, discounted, the lowest prices you'll find anywhere. Okay, enough plugging. That's how we fund the op with the high-quality products, and appreciate your patronage out there, your support. It is certainly a blessing, and God bless you, and I want to thank you all. Shane in North Carolina, thanks for holding. You're on the air.
Hey, yeah, I definitely mainly called about the Paris incident, but I'll kick it off with a couple of comments. Looking forward to hearing Kurt Haskell. I think you mentioned about him calling from Detroit. I believe he's an expat now, and he's actually relocated to Central America somewhere. Well,
I hadn't paid attention to that, but I saw him on video Skype earlier when they were testing. I'll ask him that when he comes on.
Yeah, and he's doing a little bit of radio now, actually. So I think that's pretty cool. He's this whole thing that's happened to him made him pretty active.
Yeah, he looked like he lost some weight when I saw him on Skype before Ron Paul came on, and they just corrected me. He is now in Costa Rica most of the time, so he is boy voyage the United States.
Yeah, climbing tropical fruit trees will help you peel off a few pounds. As far as Rand Paul, which isn't the main reason I called, I don't know. I'm still on the fence if I'm even going to vote this time around, because Rand Paul, I feel like, is becoming more of a what I call Teocon these days. He just seems to not really reflect his father whatsoever. I mean,
he has made some more hawkish statements and separated himself a bit from his dad in a purely political attempt to win the presidency, but I know he's a libertarian, pro-gun, pro-sovereignty, and a trillion times better than Hillary Clinton. So that's where I stand on that. But yeah, he's made some disturbing comments. So is Nigel Farage, the leader of UKIP, and that's being done purely to play politics. I think it's a mistake, but he's doing it.
It's better than Jabba Bush, but as far as the Paris thing, I had a couple quick little comments, and one was that the video footage that appeared to be, kind of fake or whatever, with the cop being missed by the gun, supposedly that was taken with a cell phone camera, and I think that's kind of odd, because if I was witnessing something like that, I don't think grabbing my phone to shoot video would be my first priority. I think it would probably be maybe making a call to get some backup, because clearly the cops in the area are all being shot. So I thought that was a little sketchy. But what I was curious about is this. Now, this may or may not be the case with this Paris thing, but you know how after Sandy Hook, it's like every other person seems to think everything's a total hoax, and I know that's not what you think. But what I'm curious about is, do you think that there's a new level of sophistication with a lot of these false flags where they plant a couple of pieces of, flimsy evidence that get everybody talking and steer them in the wrong direction? So, like, to make. Yeah,
when you're trying to, decipher cloak and dagger, dirty tricks, it's pretty hard to do. It's just that when you learn that they were funded by Western funding, then you learn that it was the same Amaral Alaki connection underwear bomber. Then those are big red flags that they were patsy provocateurs. The classic MO has been followed. And then, yeah, it kind of becomes a red herring, to say the whole thing was staged. Because they have staged events before. But then you learn the school had been closed and reopened, and you got video of the kids going in circles in and out of the building, and they don't call the rescue choppers for 2 hours, and then they tear the building down and seal it, and they get caught using blue screens, and a email by Bloomberg comes out in a lawsuit where he's telling his people, get ready in the next 24 hours to capitalize on a shooting. Yeah, so Sandy Hook is a synthetic, completely fake, with actors, in my view, manufactured. I couldn't believe it at first. I knew they had actors there, clearly, but I thought they killed some real kids. And it just shows how bold they are that they clearly used actors. I mean, they even ended up using photos of kids killed in mass shootings here in a fake mass shooting in Turkey. So, yeah, or Pakistan. The sky is now the limit. I appreciate your call. Shirley in Louisiana, you're on the air. Welcome.
Yes, Alex, how many times does a person have to lie to you before you quit believing anything they say?
If they lie to me saying food tastes good and it doesn't, then I trust them still. Or if they fudge on something, you know, because they don't want to get in trouble, then I might let it pass once or twice. But if they lie on substantive business deals or are deceptive about products, or as government lie to me 2 or 3 times, then I certify them as liars and don't believe anything they ever say and will not associate with them. The problem is with corrupt corporations and governments, we can't get them out of our lives, and they're there in our lives at the barrel of a gun.
You're a better person than I am. All you have to do is lie to me once. And case closed. I won't believe anything you say, even if you were standing on a 20-story stack of Bibles.
No, I hear you, but I mean, I consider one big lie on something substantive to be a deal breaker with me in relationships or anything else. But if somebody, you know, lies to you about something to save face that isn't premeditated, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I think everybody, their wife has asked them, does this look good? And you've learned a woman doesn't really want to know if it looks good. They want to hear you tell them it looks good. So you just tell them it looks good. And maybe that goes for men as well. Because, you know, people say, really give me criticism. And then you give them criticism and they don't like it. So I don't consider white lies the same as big lies. But yes, I get what you're saying.
I mean, and then we expect the country to do better. I mean, the people just keep falling for it. I don't see any help for us at all.
Well, Gallup showed 84% of Americans think the government's the #1 threat and think that it's run by criminals 2 weeks ago. Congress has a 7 to 8% approval rating, depending on which poll you look at, whether it's Gallup or Mason-Dixon or Zogby or others, or CNN time polls. It's about 7, 8%. Some are as high as 9%. Ooh, you know, 9% like the government. So I wouldn't say the public keeps buying it. We've gotten to the point where we just accept being lied to. I think the word is broken. They have a movie out, you know, Unbroken. Well, we are broken. And see, I'm not broken. You're not broken. You're calling into a show. You're upset. You want folks to do something. I get it. But we can go from being broken to unbroken in a matter of minutes. And that's what Homeland Security is really for, is that if we try to impeach the president or the states move to block all this tyranny, if there's a gun confiscation order, criminal elements of the federal government will detonate bombs, blame it on the liberty movement to gain the moral high ground to start a civil war. We have to pre-neutralize that or have our assets in place everywhere to videotape it when it happens to prove its false flag quickly. That's why they'll put an internet kill switch in place, which they have, to shut down opposition, to expose their game plan when they go for it all. And there's a good chance they'll nuke a city or something and claim U.S. Army troops that were patriots did it and claim that I'm involved. I mean, I've already been blamed with the Boston bombing and other crazy stuff on MSNBC. So I fully expect if there's a mushroom cloud, they'll blame talk radio in general. I'll be named. And then they'll say something like, you know, he was pulled over and pulled a gun on an officer and was taken out. Or Alex Jones had a stroke today. Ron Paul had a heart attack today. I mean, when they move, folks, they're going to kill a bunch of people in Congress they know are patriots. They're going to try to wipe out opposition. But the minute I see that stuff starting, I go into a whole different posture. So it's not like I'm a sitting duck or anything. So we know the enemy plan, and that's a big deal. That gives us a major leg up. Thank you, Shirley. We're going to go to break and come back and go to Joseph, and then go to Terry, Michael, Blake, and many others. The toll-free number to join us is 800-259-9231. Briefly on Obamacare news, British expats are fleeing the United States to get health care outside the U.S. So they fled the U.K. to get away from it. Now they're fleeing it here. They're flying home for treatment, so out of the fire, back into the frying pan. High cost and bureaucracy, pain in the butt, confusion, eligible Americans turned away from tax credits, and the IRS prepares massive taxes on your bank accounts, garnishing wages, you name it, under Obamacare, as the prices begin to double and triple. And if you criticize it, you're a terrorist. So we'll be right back. I'm Alex Jones. Infowars.com's the big site. Spread the word. One of the radio producers out there, CJ, one of the producers of the Alex Jones Show, was asking the question, why does CENTCOM even have a Twitter account? Well, they've got to communicate and release statements to the media. And you could say, well, they could have figured out the passcode. No, they're saying they hacked into the Twitter system. There are hundreds of cybersecurity companies. Well, there's really thousands that try to get contracts, but hundreds of big ones. Tens of billions a year, conservatively. Well, it's hundreds of billions, really, are spent on this. And some of it legitimately, a lot of it is not. These are the companies that stand to gain to hire an outside group to do it. So it doesn't even need to be the Pentagon that's hacking itself, but the article's up on Infowars.com. ISIS hack of Pentagon Twitter accounts traced back to Maryland. According to the group, which affiliates itself with Anonymous, the ISIS hack of the Pentagon Twitter accounts traces back to Maryland, home of the National Security Agency. Twitter and YouTube accounts belong to the U.S. military command that oversees operations in the Middle East, reportedly hacked by ISIS sympathizers earlier today, with messages being sent out for almost an hour before the accounts were temporarily shut down. American soldiers were coming for you. Watch your back, ISIS, the hackers posted on U.S. Central Command Twitter feed. USA Today reports a Twitter account from a group identifying itself as Anonymous said Monday it had tracked the source of the hack to Maryland, but that was not confirmed by officials. That is, of course, the home of the National Security Agency. Okay, let's go back to the calls. Joseph in Tennessee. You're on the air. Thanks for calling.
How are you doing today?
Good, brother.
Well, I just want to bring something to everyone's attention. I think that a lot of people are overlooking this gas price issue. A lot of the mainstream media and a lot of the alternative media continues to say that the gas prices are coming down because Saudi Arabia, the United Nations, and sanctions on Russia. Well, I've done quite a bit of research and seeing what it does to the United States, and I really think it's not aimed toward Russia; it's aimed toward the United States. It's aimed at completely destroying the rest of our economy, getting rid of what good jobs are left, and stopping us from exporting the oil. Making the oil and exporting it and making any kind of revenue.
Well, sir, you must not have been listening to my show very closely. I'm not mad at you, but let me just explain something. It's globalist, so we shouldn't look at it as Russia or America, but globalist interest using America and using Russia. But you're right. Saudi Arabia is leading the pack to bankrupt Iran and Russia. And Saudi Arabia is in a proxy war with Russia in Syria. Saudi Arabia admits this. Separately, Obama and others have given Saudi Arabia the green light to do it because worldwide top 10 oil companies don't like the hundreds of smaller oil companies that are lobbying to open new refineries and end that bottleneck and to go in and get shale oil, frack, and new oil and gas that is the only part of our economy that was growing and could have pulled us out of the recession. So, yes, you'd think lowering gas prices would help the economy, and lowering it some would, but drastically cutting it in half, basically, is now bankrupting oil development in Texas, the Dakotas, California, Canada, you name it. And so, yes, you're right. They also want to get that through to then pass a bunch of gas taxes while it's low. So this strategy is admitted. But the larger strategy is bankrupting allies of Russia and forcing Europe to start buying BP and other oil and gas. They got these new super tankers for gas to come in. So I totally agree with you that it's a the globalists don't do things unless it helps them across the board. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes. I just have one last point to make. I do know that that it has a huge impact on the United States.
Well, tell you what, I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to come back. We're going to hear what you have to say, then we'll get to other callers as well, Blake and others. But stay there, Joseph. Give us your breakdown on what it does to the economy. We were talking to Joseph in Tennessee. I'm going to go back to him. He's saying gas prices affecting U.S. economy. This is what needs to be known. Everything is rigged. Interest rates, the stock market, casinos. Even Rolling Stone, Matt Taibbi, who they glorify in the media as knowing everything, says everything is rigged, the biggest price-fixing scandal ever. And it gets into LIBOR and so much more. And he goes into the real international conspiracy. Conspiracy theorists of the world, believers in the hidden hand of the Rothschilds, the Masons, the Illuminati. We skeptics owe you an apology. You were right. The players were a little bit different, but your basic premise is correct. The world is rigged. Well, no, then you'll learn that they just use Masonic orders and other orders. Not that the Masons were the conspiracy. They would use the secret chambers and procedures as the envelope, like a virus will use a cell to replicate in. Just like they'll use a police department, the corrupt will, to take over if they can, to engage in organized crime, too big to fail, because the system will defend it, not wanting the truth to come out. There's that natural instinct to insulate the corruption. But when you talk about the rigging of things, it's all public. An AP investigative report in 2001 had the big 10 oil companies meeting in 95, 96, to shut down and use environmentalist groups to shut down refineries they didn't own, to create an artificial bottleneck to guarantee high prices, even if there was an oil war and a glut by pumping too much oil. So there's that. Then, diesel is a distillate of gasoline and has always been cheaper till the last 5 years and is now way more than gas in a giant screw job. Just like ranchers are going bankrupt with record low sales of beef, but then the meat packers sell it at record high prices. It's a rigged game, and it hurts the consumer. So gas prices were way too high for a while. Now they're way too low. It will hurt the economy in a lot of different ways. But the only boom sector we had was energy. And we already have so many other commodities going up. This is meant to kind of hide the other commodities going up and slow inflation. They did it to slow inflation, bankrupt Russia, and shut down burgeoning independent oil companies and exploration to make the U.S. energy independent, as well as Canada. And the Saudis are financing the shutdown of shale oil exploration all over the world, not just here. That's a fact. That's what's admitted. It's not debated. Joseph in Tennessee, you got a couple minutes to finish up and give us from your research why you say it hurts the economy.
Well, just looking at what it's done to Russia. Okay, we all know that the American economy is in complete shambles. And I couldn't agree with you more that that's why they call it the world stage, because everything's set up, just like you've said a million times.
Well, on big stuff like global energy, it's rigged. I mean, it wasn't totally rigged. The Russians and U.S. suppliers tried to drive down prices naturally, and the system went, you know what we're going to do? We're going to drop the hammer and bankrupt you. How's that sound? This is to jack the prices up to the moon later.
And it's just what I've seen is that, Russia has got, their economy was already fragile. Given what happened with the gas, it completely bankrupted their economy. Well, not completely, but,
No, they're bankrupt. They're going down right now.
Well, looking at how fragile the United States economy is, what do you think that's going to do to us? Since the energy, the energy output and the energy sales, what we've done is the only thing that's really been keeping us afloat. I think it was done to completely destroy, to put the last nail in the coffin of the U.S. economy.
Well, if it goes on too long and is too low, if they cut gas prices 40, 50%, that would have been reasonable for what it really costs to explore and deploy and then have a profit. From the numbers I've seen, it would have been okay. Cutting it in half or even more will end up hurting the economy and is not balanced. I mean, oil is going down to basically below what it takes to get it out of the ground. And that's the bankrupt competition. It is estimated by Lancet, British Medical Journal, and others that in the 4.5-year staged Western-backed civil war in Syria, 350,000+ people have been killed, upwards of 200,000+ of those being innocent civilians, most of the casualties being carried out by Al-Qaeda or Al-Qaeda IS-affiliated groups. Almost 100% of the Syrian Free Army that John McCain and others have met with and financed and given more than $10 billion of U.S. taxpayer money so far, almost all of them are Al-Qaeda. They fly Al-Qaeda flags, you name it. Now we learn the girlfriend of 3 of the supposed Paris shooters has fled through Turkey, even though she's on a no-fly list, and was able to get days ago into Syria, their home base, where they control about a third of the country in the east of Syria into the west of Iraq. Huge convoys that invaded Iraq were allowed to invade. Nothing was done. Now they airdrop them weapons. And now we learn Paris shooters trained, and we have these clips, with underwear bomber Patsy. Evidence reveals CIA, FBI complicit in allowing Paris shooting to happen. Now, we have Colonel Schaefer from years ago who ran the unit hunting bin Laden, and he was twice not allowed to kill him, saying that, yes, Anwar al-Awlaki is a double, triple agent of our government. He's the guy that ran Hassan, that ran the underwear bomber, and that is now running these idiots, who were allowed to have rocket launchers and machine guns and had Facebooks planning terror attacks. But we need more cybersecurity and 10,000 troops on the streets of France and troops here. And Obama has now introduced legislation, he's pushing for it, that is SOPA and CISPA by a new name. That's the headline, Infowars.com. That story just went live. So you can see the new leg of financing and opening up radical Islamicists. Now, Kurt Haskell is a successful lawyer along with his wife, and he survived the Christmas Day underwear bombing and witnessed it all. A month and a half after he said he saw a U.S. person get him on the plane without proper identification, it was admitted in Congress. We played those clips yesterday. I wanted to get him on. He's now run for Congress and failed, tried to fix things that way, left Detroit. He's moved to Costa Rica. Quite frankly, I want to go join him. But I've pledged to stay here until the end. As Churchill said, we shall go on to the end, whatever the cost may be. We shall defend our island. We shall never surrender. Well, I will go on to the end, whatever the cost may be. I will defend the Republic. I will go on to the end. I will never surrender. And I'm not saying he surrendered. He does a weekly radio show, updates his website. A lot of expats are down there. Beautiful place to go. I want to move down there, but I just got to stay in Texas and be sick from the cedar pollen. But we go now to Kurt Haskell. I'm going to give him the floor to talk about the latest events, Paris, what he saw, what happened to him. I got to tell you, man, you were never fat, but you've lost a lot of weight, and you look like Dana White of the UFC now. Don't beat me up. How long you been in Costa Rica? It looks like it's been good for you. You lost a lot of weight. You look like you're 10 years younger.
Yeah, 8 months now. Yeah. You know, it helps staying in shape when you don't work and you get the proper amount of rest and the proper diet. And, you know, when you go to the gym every day, you can give it your all. So it helps a lot.
Well, you got the floor, brother, for this segment and the next. You want to start back at the beginning of the underwear bombing you witnessed? You want to...
Well, just a couple quick thoughts on that. I really want to talk about Paris more, but for your listeners that don't know, you know, I spent 2 years and 2,000 hours of my own time investigating the underwear bomber case. So my conclusions that I finally drew in that case weren't just made on a whim. I thoroughly put a lot of my own time into figuring out why this happened to us. And what my ultimate conclusion was that the CIA put the underwear bomber on our plane intentionally, knowing that they had provided him a defective bomb that would light a small fire on our plane, but knowing that it didn't have a detonator that would blow up and blow the plane out of the sky. So with Umar thinking that himself, he was a terrorist, but of course, you know, he was very uneducated and never would have had the capability to pull off a plot such as this without CIA help. And of course, he had a defective bomb, so there was never really any threat that the plane would go down. So that was my ultimate conclusion. Now we have the media saying that the parachuters are tied to the underwear bomber, and one of them was actually his roommate, apparently while being radicalized somewhere in Europe. Well, you know, that's a big red flag to me, because I proved the underwear bomber was a false flag. And there was, as you mentioned, admissions in Congress that he was put on the plane intentionally. So to me, the underwear bomber is a proof false flag. Tying the parachuting into that proves that one is also a false flag. But, you know, we have a lot of other questionable things with the parachuting that tie into other false flags or corrupt plots. You know, the one that's a big red flag to me is the dropped ID card. I mean, come on. Where did we see this before? At the World Trade Center, 9/11. You know, with the dropped passport found in the burning rubble of the World Trade Center. So to me, that's another huge red flag. What that tells me is whoever put that there is pointing the finger incorrectly at Muslims. So what that tells me is Muslims did not perpetrate this attack at all. It's meant to create a false story. Much of the information we're being fed by the mainstream media in these attacks will be intentionally false to paint a false narrative. So that's a big one for me, because we've seen it before with another fake attack, 9/11. Not saying nobody died in 9/11, of course not. What I'm saying is the wrong people were meant to be the patsies in that case. So here we have it again. So what we take out of that, Muslims did not commit this act, or at least they weren't the major planners. So we have that. And then we just have the utter, we have the ties to the underwear bomber. We have that too. And then we just have the utter unbelievability of the story. So let's start out with the story. I'll go through some points that I just think are ridiculous. They go into Charlie Hebdo offices. They have a woman hostage they take outside to get in. Fine. Okay, believable. Next, we're told instead of demanding that she take them to the Charlie Hebdo office, they go to the front desk and ask where the office is. What? This is just ridiculous. You know, nonsense. This would never happen in real life. You point the gun at the woman's head and you say, take me to the office. You don't go and ask for directions at the front desk. So ridiculous, not credible to me. Okay, next they go upstairs. They already knew an important meeting was apparently going on. All the major players from the magazine were in a meeting, which they do only once a week, I guess, and the rest of the week they work at home. So they knew something was going on ahead of time. And then we're told they call out the names of the people they want to shoot. Not really what Muslim extremists do. Muslim extremists would open the door and shoot everybody in the room. So that doesn't sit right with me either. But
they also wouldn't flee after the attack. They'd wait and die in a glorious jihad.
Right, or maybe blow up the whole building, you know, and something like that, in a suicide bomb. That's more in line with what crazy Muslims would do. So we're told that they have a precision attack here, killing the names on the list. Okay, if you believe that, fine. But then how do 11 people get wounded in the Charlie Hebdo offices? I mean, how many people were wounded in the Sandy Hook shooting? 3? 26 dead? 3 wounded in Sandy Hook? And here, in a precision shooting, 10 dead, 11 wounded? No. So somebody's lying there, or I don't know what. It's conflicting stories. So that tells me we're not being told the real story by somebody. Okay. then they leave. Fine. But now there's only evidence of 2. I mean, there's video of when they leave outside, they get into 2 shootouts with cops. Fine. But where's guy number 3? You know, we're told right away that there's 3 of them. He's nowhere to be seen anywhere. He's not in the escape car. He's not in the building. The witnesses don't see him. As a matter of fact, one of the witnesses in Charlie Hebdo said one of the perpetrators had blue eyes, and the 3 suspects named all have brown eyes. Lo and behold, one of them's a kid, and he's in school during the shooting, and it's impossible.
And now we have the police chief that was involved in investigating, killing himself while writing the report. Yeah, of course. Stay there. I mean, I know they've got radical Muslims. To me, it looks like they just financed them to do this. You're saying it may be totally fake. Old Obama, he was going to give you free houses, free cars, free everything. All he gave the black community was double their unemployment. But it gave people the pride. And I hope that Republicans out there don't have pride if we get a Chris Christie or a Jeb Bush and go, well, at least it isn't Obama, or at least it isn't Hillary. Well, I don't like Jeb, but he's better than Hillary. I don't know. It'd be better to have Hillary because folks are really angry and sick of it. She couldn't get jack squat done. See, I'm thinking about beating these people, not being played by them. If the system wants Jeb Bush over Hillary, there's a reason for that. That's another debate. We're going to have Mr. Haskell with us 10 minutes into the next segment, then I'll go to your phone calls. Blake and Truth and Bobby and Michael and Wildman. We'll get to all of you. So please stay there. I want to hear your comments. I see people have some pretty interesting comments like gas prices, works in a refinery. He wants to talk about the economy. That's Wildman. Blake wants to talk about the Paris shooting. Truth Raider wants to talk about hacking and 9/11. Blake wants to talk about, Bobby wants to talk about collapse of the dollar. That's all coming up. But finishing up with questions about Paris, when you say Muslims didn't do it, I would agree the West has financed the takeover of regions, giving the weapons to radical jihadis that do come out of Saudi Arabia. They're allowing these people to fly back and forth out of the West. They're recruiting Western terror armies to now attack us to complete the police state takeover. That's all clear. But are you saying from your research, you're a smart guy. I mean, Muttalib wanted to call you in the trial until they blocked it. We shouldn't forget that. And what you said got confirmed in Congress. So I know you're an accurate guy, but your gut really tells you these guys may not have even been involved, or what are you saying?
No, I want to be really clear on it because it's kind of complicated how I see these going down. I see that the U.S. and or Israel, however you want to take it, most of the plots I think have been CIA plots. This particular plot I think is a Mossad plot. I can get into why if you want me to, but anyway, I think what they're doing, they're taking these stupid, uneducated Muslims, they're handpicking some, and they're having undercover CIA, Mossad agents, whoever, radicalize them in Europe, believing that the undercover agents are actually Al-Qaeda, ISIS, whoever. They're taking them in these camps, whatever you want to call them. They're having them make videos. And when the time comes that they're needed to be a patsy, then all of a sudden they get a call from bin Laden, al-Awlaki, whoever the most holiest CIA agent would be at that time, to demand that they go to do their mission. And then they handpick whichever ones, best fit that particular mission.
And by the way, we know that's what they've done in the past with Hassan, the underwear bomber, the rest of them. So you're absolutely right, and I believe that's what went on.
So it's not completely accurate to say Muslims aren't involved. They do carry out the attacks. Some of them, or at least parts of them, are real, not all of them. But to say the Muslims are doing the attacks is not correct, because without training, financing, planning of the events, the inside information, none of these events would take place.
They're the useful idiots that are dumb enough to carry it out.
Yes, that's all they are. But it's not completely correct to say Muslims aren't involved, because they are. But without that helping hand, there would be none of these attacks.
Sure. Well, no, I totally agree with your analysis, and that's pretty much what I see going on here. I don't.
Right.
I mean, I know I've seen UPI and AP and Jerusalem Post headlines that Israel created fake Al-Qaeda groups in 1992 to counter Hamas. And that's on record that Israel has staged false bombings on itself. That's not me. That's the Jerusalem Post and Haaretz. So I don't put it past Israel or elements of it to get sympathy, just like a black dorm might burn a cross out front to get, you know, extra money or something. I get people doing things for sympathy, people wounding themselves. It's very common in psychology. How do you say it's CIA or Mossad?
This one, I think, is Mossad, and here's why. Okay, so you have the France vote to recognize Palestine as a state, which allows them to go into the International Criminal Court now and bring proceedings against Israel. Now, before that vote, Netanyahu threatened France, saying if they voted for this, there would be grave consequences. So let's think about what grave consequences from Israel to France would be. Well, obviously, they're not going to go bomb France. They're not that open about it. They would do something via the Mossad. So, you know, if I threaten your family, Alex, and say if you take a particular action and then you do that, and then 12 members of your family end up dead shortly thereafter, who are the police going to come look after? Me. I'll be suspect number one.
Stay there. Keep rolling this out. It's intriguing. Kurt Haskell, a lawyer and a patriot, smart guy, helped blow the underwear bombing wide open, literally, is our guest right now. Stay with us. We're just stating facts here. Kurt witnessed the CIA put the drug to Mutalib on the plane so a firecracker went off in his pants so they could put naked body scanners in the airports and train us to be slaves. It later came out in Congress. A double, triple agent of the CIA, Anwar al-Awlaki, handles almost every one of these terrorists. And they're allowed to travel even when they're on no-fly list. It's the same story over and over again. The motive by totalitarians in government, by despotic pushers, is to allow these attacks to take place and to stir them up. And they usually find the same narcissistic, egomaniac, low IQ dum-dums to do it. Just like the FBI's been caught, the New York Times has reported on it, hatching almost every major terror plot. Sometimes with people with 70 and 75 IQs, mentally retarded people. Remember the FBI famously, it's got to be like 10 years ago, it's 9 years ago, 2006, got a bunch of black street kids who were homeless, and 20 down to about 16, who were Christians. They were pothead Rastafarians. They dealt pot. And for a year and a half, the FBI got them a warehouse, gave them hundreds of thousands of dollars, in some cases a month, all the weed they could smoke, all the beer, big screen TVs, and had a fake Rastafarian lead them and say, we must convert to Islam or I won't give you more money and more weed, and we must blow up the FBI building in Miami. And the news was like, a virtual army to take down America and destroy everything. Well, and then it came out in court. They could not tie their shoelaces. And a bunch of them were on welfare and were rated as mentally retarded. And the same story repeats time and time again. The guys that drove the truck bomb in '93, and I had the former federal informant Ahmad Salam on earlier this week, one of them had a 71 IQ and one had an 80 IQ. 70 is mentally retarded. So you need to understand, now the guys I saw doing the shooting did not look stupid. So I don't know what's going on. I just cannot believe how bold all this is. But look how everything's rolling out, how the PR is all prepared. When you have a terror attack and they don't have a bunch of legislation ready, and there's not a big push, sometimes it's a real attack. But when it's all ready to go and you see the rollout, that's the big sign for me. So you'd gotten up to the point of talking about how they recruit them, how they set them up, how they use Yemen and other areas captured in Syria as training grounds. They have these handlers. That's on record. They're allowed to fly even on a no-fly list because other good agencies and subgroups identify them and put them on lists. And then the higher-ups are like, oh, no, let them travel. Please continue. And then I want to talk about why you decided to evacuate the United States and how you're liking Costa Rica and some of your views on the world. Kurt Haskell, again, survivor of the underwear bombing and blew the whistle on it with his wife, also a lawyer. Go ahead.
Sure. So I've given the motive for Mossad to do this. Now, I'll give you the evidence that I think shows that they did it. So first of all, we have the dropped ID card pointing to a Muslim doing this, which I think is nonsense. Okay, but along with the ID card, various evidence used in the shooting was there that they allegedly used to pick DNA off of, and within a couple hours they run it through a DNA database, and now they have names and pictures of all three suspects within a couple hours they're putting on TV. Utterly nonsense. But where did we see this before? We saw it on 9/11. So, but the reason for that was that there was a very quick need to point the finger away from Israel, because what I said earlier, because of the vote that directly points the finger to Israel as being the most likely perpetrator of this attack. So we have the immediate need to identify Muslims and show their pictures. Okay. Next, we have Kulalabi. Now, there's no evidence that I've seen anywhere that shows Kulalabi involved in the shooting whatsoever. The third guy, he's the black guy, you know, then there's the two Kouachi brothers, but all the videos of the shooting only show two guys. So what does Kulalabi attack? Well, he goes into a kosher grocery store, of course. Okay. Completely what I would expect. While he's in there, he does two miraculous things. He talks to a radio station, hangs up the phone, but he doesn't hang it up all the way. So the radio station can listen to what he's saying there. And then he has a phone call with CNN. Are you kidding me? CNN, while he's holding hostages. So it's utterly unbelievable. But what he says is he's a co-conspirator with the Kouachi brothers, and he's part of ISIS. So what this does is this ties in Kulalabi, attack on Jewish people, kosher store, with the two brothers that allegedly perpetrated Charlie Hebdo. So what we have, it's a subliminal message here. Israel did not do this. Here are the Muslims, and Israel would not kill poor people, the kosher grocery store that Kulalabi is alleged to do. And how do we find out the evidence that Kulalabi is tied to the Kouachi brothers? Why, it's his phone call with CNN. So, which brings into question the where we've seen this before, the fake phone calls on 9/11. So we have another fake phone call here to give evidence tying him in where he does not otherwise belong. So that is the extra oomph, if you will, that Israel did not do this because 4 Jewish people died in the attack at a kosher store. So there was a little extra push needed here. First, you point the immediate finger away from Israel, and then you give it the little extra push of 4 Jewish people dying with a guy who wasn't involved in the shooting in any way, except by this phone call with CNN, where he admits he's a co-conspirator. So that's how I tie in the Mossad in this one. I think that's most likely. And then the last part of it is you have Netanyahu kind of bringing himself center stage in France, you know, appearing at a synagogue where all the members sing the national anthem for him, and it's all over the media. And we have Obama taking the opposite tactic, staying away, staying in the U.S., not going to the March of World Leaders, which tells me this is not Obama's deal. This is Netanyahu's deal. He's pushing it up. He's playing it up to the max, and Obama's kind of stepping aside. So those are the reasons I think this is the Mossad plot.
Well, I've had former famous Mossad commanders on the show that talked about declassified examples where they would tap into undersea cables and stuff and then send terrorist transmissions over them to even blame countries on their cables, things like that. I mean, I'm not a hater just of Israel to hate Israel, because all major countries engage in this stuff. What I'm saying is I don't want to be identified with those that their whole religion is blaming Israel if somebody falls on a banana peel. But that said, Israel is very famous for staging terror attacks that were then to be blamed on political enemies. They got caught in Egypt famously doing that. I mean, that's in mainstream Israeli papers. Israel was in UPI, did admit they created fake al-Qaeda groups and did bombings at key political times to mess up the peace process. Israel has also in Iraq and in Spain, after World War II, they would blow up mosques, blame it on other groups to make Jews move to Israel so that they could then be controlled by the political parties there. And so the tactics being used are the same ones that our own government's been caught engaging in. And so I don't know what you do, though, when you're faced with real radical Muslims that the West has armed, and Israel's been involved in that as well. They're in the Golan Heights aiding the Free Syrian Army. France is involved. Everybody's involved. What do you do, Kurt, when we know governments do this, including the Russian government stages stuff? I mean, this is an old tactic. It's in British manuals. It's in Army manuals. WikiLeaks released those. The Army admitted those were real and prosecuted Manning for it. They teach Army captains who are in covert operations in certain areas how to do false flags. That's in the manual. Well, I've interviewed Green Berets, colonels. He got sued over it, but he won a lawsuit, who admitted that, oh, torture's not new. We used to do it with, with electricity. We carried it in our field pack. I tortured people all the time. I just think there's a naivete out there about what's really going on and how widespread it is. So what do we do then about these tactics that we know are taking place? And again, there is, though, now a new giant army of radical Muslims that have been created. So the question is, why wouldn't they just order and deploy some of them into attack? And I guess the answer is they just did. Well, then why would you then need to set them up and have somebody else do it if you've got an army that's willing to do it? Why make the operation so complex?
Well, they want to have limited damage, and they want to be able to control the situation. I mean, we don't even know, honestly, if anyone in Charlie Hebdo even died. We don't know. There's no evidence of this. So for all that we know, this could be another Sandy Hook event where it's very questionable whether anyone died at all. So, but it's to control the narrative. I mean, if you send in real radicalized Muslims, who knows what they're going to do? They may blow up entire buildings, suicide bombs all over the place. You might be talking about a mass casualty event.
And then the government looks really bad getting, for a while, defeated by it, or absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that's not the goal. The goal is to have a minor terrorist attack with limited casualties that can be exploited majorly in the media. That's the goal.
Well, let's not forget, and I went there days after it happened and made it a big part of my film, Terror Storm. They bombed the subway in two areas and the train 2 places, and the bus in one area. The leader of it was MI6 and was protected. And then Netanyahu was like 300 yards from where the first bomb went off. And they had Visor Consultancy with running a drill of the exact trains and exact bus hit at the same time in the exact place. That is impossible. So they also run drills in case any other operatives get caught. They just say it's part of the drill, Kurt. I mean, really, these false flags are so obvious. So I just have trouble believing it's always a false flag. But then the evidence just keeps emerging that it is.
Well, my definition of a false flag is the event is blamed on someone other than the ones really pulling the strings. So that's my definition. There may be people dying. There may not be. It may be mostly as told or partly as told. But what we're never told is who are the people really pulling the strings. So that, to me, is the definition of false flag. But what's extra troubling to me in this plot is the tying into the underwear bomber, because the underwear bomber case, in my opinion, was definitely a CIA plot, and this case is most likely a Mossad plot. So what we have here, to me, is a definite link between Mossad and CIA in the grooming of patsies, and which tells me there's some kind of coordination going on between those two governments in the implementation of these false flag attacks, which is a very scary thought, if you ask me.
Well, what should we call this video when we post it and do an article about it tomorrow? Terror survivor, Paris, an inside job, or would you say expert, Paris attack Mossad operation? I mean, I don't know if with the circumstantial evidence, it all points to false flag. It all points to the proxy cutouts. We know they were allowed to fly. We know they're being trained as the CIA handler. Why would it be a CIA handler and now it's a Mossad op, even though Israel certainly has capitalized, not letting a good crisis go to waste, I mean, I'll blame Israel in a second if they just red-handed admit it, and then Israel's declassified. You know, they blew up hotels and blamed it on the Egyptians, or blew up nightclubs and blamed it on jihadis. I mean, that's declassified. So, I mean, I'm not shying away from blaming Israel. I think now you got to look at the CIA, because it's their handler that was over these guys, and it was Western governments letting these idiots fly around. I mean, I would have to say Mossad then working in concert with Western intelligence.
Could be. Could very well be. You know, I just look at the evidence and see what is the most likely outcome. I don't know 100%, and none of us do, but to me, that's the most likely outcome. So then the next question is, well, are they working in concert with the CIA government, or the CIA? Was this a joint operation? But with Obama not going to the March of the Leaders and all the other factors I mentioned, I think this is a Mossad plot, which to me means that the two governments are working hand in hand in the grooming of the patsies. Or, you know, they kind of have a kind of a pool, or, you know, a school for the training of the patsies. Well, sure,
we know Camp X-Ray is a school for jihadi commanders. That's now on record. It is just totally insane, and I don't think we can safely say who's behind it. I think what you're pointing at has a lot of evidence to it, and is certainly a major suspect, if not prime suspect, just because of the motive and also some of the other staging of things that stinks to high heaven. I just know this: not one but two passports survived the fiery infernos of 9/11 and were found that day on the ground. That's pure bull. And the fact that it's been done again, I mean, does this never end, Kurt, how obvious this is?
Well, the sad thing is it's only obvious to, 10 or 20% of the population. That's what's really sad. The rest are brainwashed and won't even consider what's going on when it's right before their eyes. That's what's really sad.
Well, more people are becoming aware. You were already a smart lawyer, but now you were a listener and were investigating 9/11, and then you saw it happen with the underwear bomber, and your story got proven true, came out in Congress twice, and it just shows you how much trouble we're in. In closing, we're going to go to break and come back and take a few calls from Blake and others. Kurt, I'd like to invite you back soon sometime to be a guest host when I'm out of town with some of the fill-in crew, like David Knight doing a good job with you. But in closing, in 1 minute, why did you split the U.S., and how do you like Costa Rica?
Well, I love Costa Rica. Let me tell you, it's a really great country. Why did I leave the U.S.? The reason I left the U.S. is a very simple one. I wanted to live in a free country, not where you live for free, but a country where you can have freedom. You know, I had my life very negatively affected by a false flag attack, and I ran for Congress hoping to make a change, and the people did not have enough sense to vote me in, someone that would actually represent the interests of the people against this corrupt government. So I did not want to live in a country anymore where we have such a corrupt government doing false flag attacks that hurt the people, and a majority of the people that can't see what's good for them when it's right before their eyes. So it's a combination of all those things, and this, to me, this is the best country in the world.
Well, I know there's a lot of CIA and FBI expats down there, so maybe they'll leave that as somewhat free, like Switzerland. Because I've looked at Costa Rica as an emergency bug out, and I'm going to be looking a lot closer. Not that I'm going to ever leave, but I may have to get my family out or do something like that at some time, just because I'll go to a FEMA camp, but not my kids. And it's all going that way, folks, when they false flag it and blame it on the Patriots. That's what all this is a build-up to when they're done with the Muslims. Kurt Haskell, Godspeed. Give folks your website.
Well, I co-host a radio show Monday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern on freedomizerradio.com, and it's called The Proof Negative Show. You can listen to me there every Monday.
All right, great job. God bless you. Stay with us. You know, I reserved judgment on this whole thing for a week, and then it came out that they were being handled by the known CIA operative Anwar al-Awlaki, and I've got Colonel saying he works for the CIA and is protected, and I've got London Guardian articles, and I've got our government helping create this new Islamic state, and then the U.S. Army is going to have to fight it now, and the bomb makers will have more money. I mean, it's a bunch of interest. I really think you can't blame Germany or France or Israel or the U.S., just like you can't blame an average cop for a cop killing somebody in cold blood in Albuquerque. Those cops have now been indicted, by the way, as of yesterday, who famously, killed the unarmed homeless guy and celebrated his killing. And they've been indicted because one of them driving up said, "I'm going to kill this guy on video. Just, I can't wait to kill him." and I'm going to blow his testicles off. And the other police are like, what are you saying? I mean, it shows mental illness, but you don't blame all the cops in the country because there's one crazy person. And it's very unhealthy to just say the U.S. is behind it, Israel's behind it. Criminal operations and special interest across the world are working together because this gives them more power and more control and lets them roll out the cybersecurity takeover. I mean, here's the new article on Infowars.com. Obama's internet protocol is CISPA with a new name. Infowars.com, Kit Daniels. Get that out to everybody. Obama proposes dragnet for America's private data. Special report, obedient D.C. Metro passengers wait for their death. Amazing video. Economist, world leaders will exploit Charlie Hebdo to eliminate encryption. Lieberman, turn outrage over Charlie Hebdo into world war against Islam. Study, average lawmaker 18 times richer than average American household. Seahawks players shill for Obamacare, a new video. Infowars.com. Ron Paul article, lessons from Paris. Legal pot turns 1-year-old in Colorado. That's some of the news on Infowars.com. Let's go to Blake in FEMA Region 9. Thank you for holding.
Hey, Jones, my brother. So it sounds like we're not, I was calling in to disagree, but it sounds like we're not in disagreement anymore. It's actually almost, it's a beautiful thing that I got on right after Haskell, because what you guys are saying is just, okay, so you guys are perfect in what you're saying, but it sounds like you have some disagreements, but you really don't. What we've got to do is we've got to focus on who's really above all these people. You know, it's like he's saying Mossad, you're saying, you know, it's the termites, right? It's the termites that have been put into the, but you don't, okay, in Dr. No, there's a snake, right, that he puts in the bed. You remember that?
Yes.
Well, the snake fails, and Dr. No learns his lesson. You got to send a human to do the job. You don't send in the termites to do a specific operation like this. The termites are the scapegoat. So I think that's the crux of the difference that we're all having.
You're saying the Muslim radical jihad dum-dums are nothing but decoys.
Absolutely. Your gut instincts were right on when you first saw it. These guys were too good. All the mistakes they made were planned mistakes, just like Haskell was saying about the telephone call that, you know, he leaves the phone off the hook. Those are planned mistakes. What they actually did was perfect operation. So those guys were not, you know, they weren't the Black Widows in the bed. The Black Widows have a purpose, but they don't use them for that kind of a purpose. When they want a specific operation done right, you don't know what they'll do when you put the Black Widows in the bed or the snake in the bed.
I mean, it's a false flag now. Lockheed's behind it. I mean, they let them fly all over the place. The woman escaped back to Jihadville, Syria. It's all staged. It was staged again. Yeah, listeners are right. We'll be back. I'm going to come back in overdrive. Well, I know this. The establishment's trying to use these attacks to radically kill what basic liberties we have left. We're taking phone calls right now. Michael in New Jersey, then Truth in Oregon. Michael, you're on the air.
Hi, Alex. I just need to satiate my insatiable thirst for high-quality documentaries, and I know you've been extremely busy, but I can't help but call and inquire about the status of Obama Deception 2.
I made the film 3 times and then always get behind with other things and never released it. And I need to release it before Obama leaves office so that people understand the larger agenda. And I really do intend, if I can finish some other projects, I really do intend to try to get that out. So there you go.
Excellent. You have a good one.
You too, brother. Let's talk to Truth Raider in Oregon. Go ahead.
Happy New Year, Alex, from the great Northwest. Thanks for going into overdrive just for me. I appreciate it.
You bet, my friend.
Okay. The 9/11 Solved documentary, I spoke to you briefly about it. I know you're really busy, but did you get a chance to look at any of it?
On YouTube?
Yes.
I believe I'd watched part of that before. I didn't go the time you called in about it.
Okay. just reviewing some of the names. You got, the list goes on and on. Wells Fargo, Wachovia, Bank of America, HSBC, AIG, Cantor Fitzgerald, Garbon.
Yeah, we had all the insider trading, the passports floating down unburned. I mean, it's just total bull.
Right. It seems to me more like a Wall Street hit more than anything else when I'm looking at it. It was just something just to move great trillions of dollars.
Well, it was a cover-up of a bunch of Wall Street fraud and derivatives and a bunch of records that were destroyed.
Right, exactly. So I just want to see what you thought about that. Anyway, Proposition 92, I believe it was, the GMO bill here for Oregon went down narrowly. So it was ahead for a while. I mean, everybody wants it, but guess what? It gets shot down.
Yeah, it shows a massive election fraud going on and also a lot of disinformation. Good to hear from you. Wild Man in Texas, go ahead. Thanks for holding her on the air.
God bless you, Alex. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you for calling.
On this gasoline, just talking earlier to a guy in Tennessee and you made a comment about why diesel was so high and everything. And the reason is EPA did that, and it's because of the desulfurization of diesel. Is just another way to jack the price up. And it's actually the low end of the distilling process. It's on the heavier end because gasoline's made from it, the different components that make it. But anyway, in the long run, what this is going to do is it's helping the single-parent families out there, the low gas prices, but they don't see the big picture. This is a domino effect, and eventually it's going to get them because you're right, eventually it's going to be $5-6 a gallon. But right now, it's the big boys that are falling. Everybody's cutting back exploration, a.k.a. the shell and the fracking and all that's cutting back. Here in Texas, WTI has gone way down, which helps up the particular refinery I'm at because we don't do exploration like the other ones, like ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, and them. They've already cut their capital spending for this year by 20%, which, and that domino effect affects the people that do the turnarounds and do upgrades to refineries to expand. So they cut that back. Well, all the people that work for these contractors, subcontractors that come in and do this work for these refineries, they don't have a job because they're cutting that back capital spending, so they start laying off. So eventually it trickles down to the low guy. And it's going to hurt everybody. I mean, you can see it. The same thing happened in the 70s and the 80s. I've been doing this 31 years. So.
It's absolutely a way to knock out the competition and then massively increase the prices later, and they admit that. And it's really sad. I mean, it was too expensive before, now it's way too cheap. And it just shows it's an artificial economy. It's like beef producers. They can't make a living, but the meat packers make record money.